that happened in association. Do you think this
Well,
tripod is guilty as well?
well, we wouldn't.
Because Adam and Eve disobeyed God. Do you think this tripod is guilty?
Well, no, because the tripod wasn't. As Muslims agree, Adam means mankind. Isn't that right?
No, Adam means one person.
Oh, that's where we disagree. Okay.
Okay.
So we would say, Hebrew means mankind.
So
That's what
God.
Adam means.
So when God was speaking with Adam, He was speaking with mankind.
He was meaning the whole of mankind. That's
And
right.
did Adam have
Humankind.
children?
Of course.
And
Cain
those
and Abel.
children, and who's Cain and Abel? Whole of mankind?
Well, every child of Adam, including Adam and Eve, including Cain and Abel and Seth, wasn't it? They were all tarnished by Adam's sin. So
Do you
they-
remember what you have done 2,000 years ago?
Well, I don't remember, but the Bible tells me.
Do you remember? I'm asking you a simple
I
question.
don't remember. No.
Right. Were you involved in the killing and ethnically cleansing a whole tribe 2,000 years ago?
Well,
Were you guilty of that?
well, the Bible would say that all Christians are, well, all human beings are tarnished by the sin of Adam.
I'm
So we're
talking
all-
about yourself.
Oh,
A particular
including me,
crime.
including me,
No,
including me.
you individually, maybe inclusive of others, you actually ethnically cleansed the whole tribe 2,000 years ago. And are you guilty of that?
Well, I'm not guilty of every single sin, but
No,
I
that
am.
particular one I'm giving an example of.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I am guilty of the sin of Adam.
I'm not talking about the sin of Adam now. 2,000 years ago, ethnically a tribe was cleansed.
What are you referring to?
You don't even remember.
Well, I'm not sure what you're
So
talking about.
if you don't even remember,
I'm not sure
so
what you're referring to.
if you don't even remember about that crime, then how can you even be guilty of that crime?
No cameras.
Do you?
No cameras.
Did you?
No, from the back. No cameras from the back's okay. no face. Spare the face. I don't want any paparazzi at my front door. No front. no, not
Do
from
you-
the front. Spare the face.
Do you?
Charmer.
Do you take
Drama.
the responsibility that you are guilty of that crime?
Well, I
Did you make a choice to commit this genocide, ethnic cleansing?
What I'm trying to say is that I recognise my responsibility in Adam.
I'm not talking about Adam. I'm giving a specific example. I'm not going
Can
to
you-
give
can
you
you-
any more detail
Give
because
me some more detail.
Why-
Don't be so secretive.
were you there 2,000
No,
years ago?
Well, I would say I was there. I would say all
Okay,
human beings
fine.
were there in Adam.
The reason why I'm giving you this explanation is for this reason. What is a sin? A sin is an act of transgression of God's commands, God's
We would
law,
agree with that. Chris would
which
agree with
can be done only by an willing agent who's
Yes.
conscious and who has known or heard this command of God.
Yes.
This tripod doesn't know.
Well, this
It's not
tripod
conscious.
is a sentient being, and this
No.
tripod isn't related in any way to
So
Adam.
I'm saying you, to be guilty of the crime 2,000 years ago, you have to be actively being present there and using your own choice, the freedom of choice that God has given you, say, look, I am committing this crime. If you did that, then you will be guilty. If you had no personal involvement with your own choice, then how can you be guilty of that crime?
Well, we can be because the Bible says that Adam was our true representative.
I'm not talking about Adam, I'm talking about 2,000 years ago, an ethnic cleansing and genocide. You have no recollection. You were not there present because you were only born within the last 100 years. Isn't that right?
It's true.
Yes. So it was you had no involvement with it. No court of law on planet Earth today, a just court of law, can punish you for a crime 2,000 years ago saying you did it. Because you had no active volition. No volitional will of yours was involved in committing this crime because you didn't even exist there in the form that you are. So we cannot say that I am guilty and you are guilty of the crime that happened there. Adam and Eve, when that particular disobedience occurred in the sight of God, when they ate from the tree, I wasn't responsible because I did not choose myself to eat from the tree. I did not give consent to eat from the tree. I have nothing to do with it. Now, because I have no partake in this matter of Adam and Eve, I am 0% guilty. I am totally innocent of that crime. anyone who comes along and say, I am guilty and I am to be punished is totally unfair and unjust. And this is just a brief response to the idea of Christian story of atonement where, Adam and Eve sin, everyone is guilty of that. Look, to be guilty, like, are you guilty of the crimes that happen, elsewhere in another country?
Well, let me add to that by saying, not only does the Bible teach that we all made the decision in Adam. So in a sense, as Adam reached out his hand, the whole of mankind did. But we all ratify, we all confirm that decision when we willfully sin. So we as human beings, which is kind of what you're saying, I think, all demonstrate we are Adam's children because we are all sinful human beings. None of us, I take it, here would say we're the perfect human being. And if I were to come up to you and say, great to meet you, my name's Ed, by the way, I'm perfect, I hope you would all laugh. I'd hope you would all laugh because you know that I'm not perfect. I'd either be mad or deluded. So we Christians would say, all human beings, not only do they sin in Adam, but we demonstrate that we are children of Adam when we willfully sin. That's why we rejoice at this time of year, not least, because we understand Jesus to be the new Adam who lived the life that Adam did, but took the punishment that only Adam and Adam's children deserve on the cross.
Okay, we'll come back to this point because this is what I said to remind me again on this issue. But just to the point that you've just made, in terms of punishing others for their sins, God taught the children of Israel differently. If you have read the book of Ezekiel, chapter 18, chapter 18 is a refutation of a view in which people believe that if, for example, what's your name? Ed.
Ed, yeah. And what's your name?
Mansur.
Mansur.
Nice meeting you.
Good to meet you. Happy Christmas.
We don't celebrate birth or death of any god, as you know.
In the general way.
Sure. So, Ed, if your father, God forbid, if he had committed any crime,
which he has, no cameras.
Say,
no cameras.
For example,
spare the face. I don't want any paparazzi. From the back only.
Yeah.
From the back. You can film from the back, not from the front.
Please. Respect him. Please.
Spare the face. Spare the... You charming man. Turn that off, please, if that's on.
Blur his face.
Yeah.
That's another way of doing it.
Turn that camera off.
Sorry.
Can you turn that camera around?
Ed, if your father committed a crime of murder, God forbid, I'm sure he's a very gentleman.
Well,
okay?
The Bible says he may have committed murder in his heart, but anyway.
If he really committed a murder of killing real people, are you guilty of the crime?
No filming. Not from the front.
Sorry, you're interrupting the discussion like this with cameras.
Okay. I trust you.
If your father committed a crime of murder, would it be fair and just to punish you for what your father has done?
Well, that's a very interesting point, isn't it? Because...
So I'm the judge.
Okay.
And I came to realize your father committed a crime. Yeah. I can't find him. I found you instead. So should we kill you on the electric chair?
Well, that is very interesting, isn't it? Can I stand in for my father?
Not stand in. I'm not talking about your voluntary goodwill of saving your father. I'm talking about, is it just, as a judge, to punish you for the crime of your father? According to Ezekiel chapter 18, it is not just. That's what I'm pointing to. And let me explain what it says there. Suppose there is a son who has a father, and then about 3 generations explain. If you have son, and he is righteous, the righteousness is on him. If you are bad, that sin doesn't transmit to him. He does not carry this guilt, and he should not be punished.
Right. No, I agree with that.
If you are good, he is bad, he is the one to be blamed and punished, not you. So this sin doesn't transfer. Ezekiel chapter 18 is a whole one thesis of a refutation of the belief that sins can transmit from father to son to children. The whole chapter is one thematic unity refuting this very idea. It starts with the proverb.
I'll read it again when I get home. I haven't read it this week.
In the children of Israel, they think how if someone eats grapes, and it starts with the proverb. Yes.
Yeah.
So, as you now realize, if you commit a crime and we don't find you, we find your son or your daughter, and judge says, I'm sorry, we have to kill you and punish you. You would say this is unjust. It's not fair. Justice demands that the one who commits the crime is paying the penalty. Your son and daughter, if they had nothing to do with your own crime, they should not be punished.
Well, I see what you're saying, and I see where you're going.
And that's why
But I would say that's not always the case.
to punish us for the sins of Adam and Eve is totally unjust. But there's something else that you haven't realized.
Go on,
Adam
Mansur.
and Eve, when they realized their mistake,
Yes.
they sincerely turned to God and God forgave them. That's it. Is God not forgiving
He is.
and kind?
He is.
So when they made a mistake, did God forgive them?
Well, he promised at the time of the curse that there would one day be a child of Eve who would be the destroyer of the serpent.
But he didn't forgive them.
Well,
Is God forgiving in any way, in his
he
shape
opened
or form?
up. Well, yes, but we Christians would say that as God sort of judged and cursed Adam and Eve, if you like, because of the loving nature of God, and Muslims believe that God is loving. Even at the point that he was sort of cursing Adam and Eve, at that very moment there was still the promise that there will one day, which we call the proto-evangel, the proto-good news, that one day a son of Eve would come to overturn to destroy the evil one and overturn the effects of the fall. And we believe that.
Okay,
obviously
so
through
let's
Jesus.
now come to this point that we're trying to discuss.
back to your point
Back
about
to what?
justice.
Jesus
I would say, Christians would say that in some circumstances you can have a representative who can step in.
Who is Jesus Christ in relation to God?
Well, we would say he's the second person of the Trinity, which I know you Muslims don't believe in.
So in relation to God, who is he?
We would say he's the Son. That's what we would say.
So he's God.
So, and therefore, let me just finish this point. Therefore, we would say, Christians would say, the biggest problem that mankind faces is that we as sinful human beings will one day have to face the judgment of God. So the biggest problem we have as sinful human beings, that we are sinful and God is a holy and pure God, and that as we stand, we face the judgment of God. So the biggest problem facing mankind is God's judgment.
Yeah.
The biggest problem, if I could put it that, is it comes from God. But the solution to that problem also comes from God in the person of his Son, Jesus
And
Christ. That's
how
what we would say.
how is this a solution?
Well, we would say, Christians would say, that the solution comes, that God's solution to his problem is that Jesus takes the punishment that we deserve on the cross of Christ. So when we sin, if you like, we take God off the throne and enthrone ourselves. We decide what's right and wrong, and that's rebellion, that's sin. And Jesus comes off the throne of heaven itself. He dethrones himself and puts himself on the cross to take the punishment that only we deserve.
Okay, let me try to.
So if I could just finish this
Please
point.
finish, please.
Yeah?
If
Thank
you need
Mansur.
if you need
just
time
gonna
to explain
finish.
your point, please
Okay.
do. Just stop me
so
and
the example
carry on.
that's often given by Christian preachers in the pulpits and so forth is if you were caught speeding down Park Lane at 100 miles an hour and you went to court, and next week you're called up before the judge, and the judge said, Mansur, you need to pay £1,000 fine for speeding down Park Lane. And if I turn up and say, oh, I know Mansur, in a way, I love the guy, and I say to the judge, can I pay the fine on behalf of the judge? And the judge says, as long as justice is done, as long as
Carry on. Ignore the hecklers.
so that
why did you hide the fact that he was told
so
about
the judge would say that as
it 1
long
year
as
ago, and you still allowed him to do
as
it?
long as justice
And
is
on top
done,
of that,
that's
most
okay.
of the stuff that you now
But
pretend you didn't know about, you knew.
Christians would go
That's
one
why
stage
the
further and say
now
it's not
in
me
prison
who
for
pays
promoting
the
terrorism,
fine, it's the
and he's in
judge
jail.
himself who
How
comes
much
out of the
did
judgment
you
seat
know
who pays the fine.
Prior to last
Can you tell him to shut up?
So we will be asking you this question, and whether you like it or not, you're going to have to answer. Otherwise, every week I'll be here.
Right.
asking
So
you this
you can ignore these
question,
hecklers.
including a sheep.
So
and
when you talk about someone voluntarily takes in the penalty,
and
right?
just to give a final example, so that apparently happened during the Second World War. So when members of the Allies were caught in camps, in Nazi camps, for example, and if there's a breakout, the commandant would say to judge what's happened to their allied
I can't really hear you because of this. Can you tell him off? This is not the way to conduct discussion.
He's a Sikh. He's a Sikh.
No, it's not. You're sick. He's unwell, maybe, not sick.
When it comes to Terry, who will ask this question every week till you answer.
Okay, he's going to.
So in the Second World War, for example, if you were a prisoner of war in Colditz and there was attempted breakout, the Nazi commandant would often say, "I'm going to punish all the prisoners for the breakout to teach you a lesson." And what would happen is that he would go, every 10th prisoner stand forward, and they would be executed. And sometimes, whether it be French or English or whatever, if they were bachelors and didn't have any family, they would step forward and say, I will die on behalf of one of the other prisoners.
Okay.
And it's the same principle, if you like, within Christianity. So apart from the fact that all the prisoners are sinners, in Jesus' case, he is able to take the punishment that we deserve because he lived a sinless life. Okay. And therefore God the Father is able to execute both perfect love, perfect justice, and demonstrate his love for you and me by dying in our place. And we Christians would say that is the greatest demonstration of both love and justice that the world has ever seen. And therefore we would say, with respect to any Muslims, that therefore the God of the Bible is both more loving and more just with respect than the concept of Allah.
Sure. Now, in response, I will say there are a lot of philosophical, moral and theological problems with this belief system that you
Let's hear them.
Sure.
Let's hear them.
So, you have a God who created this universe and created human beings.
Yes.
He knows
He
how human beings should behave. And
He did.
then he says, okay, he created human beings who commit this kind of problems. And the only way to solve this problem is that he has to die himself. He has to commit some kind of self-sacrifice or suicide in a way.
Well, he didn't kill himself. Human beings killed him.
So God didn't die himself.
No, he did die, but he...
So there you go. Point stands.
He didn't kill himself.
So he committed some kind of self-sacrifice. I'm not going to use the word suicide because you might get offended by that, right?
It's not suicide.
So he committed self-sacrifice to save people from himself, by himself.
His judgment.
Yeah. That sounds
Both of
not.
us.
Think about it. God creates human beings, and the only way that he can save them for their misdeeds is by he has to die himself.
That's it.
Now, that's one big problem because what is this kind of creation that God
No cameras.
No
cameras.
creates, knowing that these human beings will fall short?
He does, because he's omniscient, that's right.
Yeah.
Which
and
Muslims
then
believe, yeah.
and he has to punish himself. Remember, it's not dying. God saves people by punishing himself.
That's right.
Yeah? So you have a God that he creates people.
That's right, because of his love.
And he punishes himself because he created them in that way.
Well, he didn't create them sinful, of course.
Did they create them in the way that led him to punish himself?
Well, with the potential, yes.
Yeah, so he punishes himself. Now, the way he does it is he doesn't go and self-sacrifice himself. He commits, in my view, another sense of injustice where he sends his innocent son. Again, that's a problem. How does God have a son to begin with? We'll come back to this point later, but that's not the point at the very minute.
Okay, it's one of the beauty of the Trinity.
He sends his son.
No cameras. Dad, you're making me nervous. Stop it. No. You ever turn it around? You can. No. Take it away. That's okay. Yeah. No, from the back. Oh no, please.
Well, why are you making it
from
difficult?
the back's okay.
Why are you making this
from
difficult?
the back's okay, please.
Why are you making this difficult?
Stop.
Okay.
Stop.
No, he says it's okay if you record from there.
From the back.
Yes.
From the back.
Thank you. Right. So, imagine you are a father and you have a son, and you've seen the people on Speaker's Corner. They're all done something wrong. The only way you can save them.
Speaker's Corner, the whole world.
Now, I'm giving you a partial example to understand locally.
Okay. Yeah.
The only way you can save them is by killing yourself, punishing yourself to save them. But what you do, instead of going and self-sacrificing your own self, you send your son and you punish him. Now, which father on planet Earth, instead of him taking the punishment, will say, no, I'm going to send my son, let him take the punishment? I wouldn't do that.
No.
You wouldn't do that. So it's really showing that the father loves himself more than his son, and he loves the world more than his son. And that's exactly what I have read in the Bible, in John 3:16. For God so loved who?
The world.
The world. So God loved the world more than the son. That's why he sent his son to be punished. So we see now God and his son and the world, human beings. Who does God love? God loves the world so much, more than his son, that he sends his son to be punished. So here, injustice upon injustice. He could have done himself if he was able to take the punishment, but he sent his son who has nothing to do with it, and he wants to save the world. Problem on this is huge. How is this problem solved? If I were to individually account...
Can I say one thing?
Of course.
I want to know why you are talking about God as if he's human.
No, God is not human. God is the creator of humans.
But you keep saying, I wouldn't do it. Why does God do it?
No, I am saying God, you believe, created us in his image. In the characteristics, we are loving, we are kind, we are just, we are forgiving. So if you are loving, kind father and mother...
About judges on this, on how we judge them.
No. Would you as a mother send your daughter to the death penalty when you could do yourself?
I'm not God.
Right, but God...
God is different from us.
So basically you're saying the love God he has, instead of...
Why don't you talk about God as
I'm just showing in terms of how we understand the love of God.
I understand where it's going. I understand where it's going.
The love of God.
Yeah, keep
so,
coming, keep
so
coming.
the reason why I say this is not even solved, the problem with the sacrifice of God that has happened, it doesn't solve the problem. I'll tell you why.
Okay, tell me.
If I, myself, individually, were to reject God and become arrogant about his message and about his guidance, and I did all the wicked things, according to God's law, I should be punished. I should go to Gehenna, hellfire. I should be burning in hellfire for eternity. In eternity, with this punishment. This is my own punishment. Okay? Someone like God is volunteering. Here comes Jesus who's volunteering. What he has to do to save me is to take the punishment that I was supposed to suffer.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
We're talking about
I think you've
punishment
got it,
like for like. So my punishment would have been
That's it.
eternal burning in hellfire. Okay, fine. So if Christ is going to be a substitute, he needs to do exactly the same, no less. So we know very clearly Christ has not and will not suffer and burn eternally in hellfire. He has not paid that price, even of myself only myself, let alone millions of other people. So Christ has already failed to pay the penalty of myself only. He has not, and you believe he will not, eternally burn in hellfire. So he has not paid the price of the sin of one individual. So doesn't matter the solution that you propose in God coming to die, still he falls short in dispensing the justice that he's so seeking. When you talk about now God coming down as a what? Are you saying the creator becomes the creation?
That's part of the wonder of Christmas.
That's not
right.
wonder. So think about it.
What's the doctrine of the incarnation, isn't it?
No, the incarnation,
Yes.
something is not your human mind can accept. I'll tell you why it can never accept it.
Okay.
The idea of incarnation is the eternal, almighty, all-knowing, perfect God limits himself.
That's part of the grace and the love of God.
Let's talk about limits himself.
Yes, he does.
And comes down
Voluntarily.
like a form of creation.
It's worse than that, of
Now
course.
here is the problem. If you are already an absolutely perfect being, meaning God Almighty, the Supreme, the Majestic,
Yes. Who
It is
created
not
and
possible.
upholds the whole universe.
it is not
by his
possible.
power.
It is not possible for this absolute being to become less than absolute. For example, God is everlasting in his existence. If somebody says he can cease to exist tomorrow and no more, you and I will reject that statement, that concept. Why? Because in his characteristics, attribute, he's everlasting with no end. Anything that contradicts this attribute, we reject it because it goes against the attribute that we have affirmed. If he is all knowledgeable to begin with,
Omniscient, as we say, yeah.
omniscient, anything that contradicts that,
Omnipotent and omniscient. Yeah.
let's talk about omniscience.
Yeah.
When we say God is omniscient, God knows everything.
Yeah.
He knows the past, present, and the future.
Of course, we agree with that.
Right. There will be no time in the future that God will be ignorant of anything.
Of course, he looks down on time.
No. It's
We say-
impossible
we
within time, outside of time, that he's ignorant of anything.
Absolutely.
So
Agree.
when in the Christian concept, the second member of the Trinity incarnates into a human being, what happens is this particular incarnation renders that person not to remain all knowledgeable. Because he says of that
is
day,
true. That is true.
but
That
I'll
is-
show you
that
why.
is true. He voluntarily gives up some of his glory.
Can God
He's also-
voluntarily cease to exist? Can God the Father voluntarily cease to exist?
No,
Why not?
because
Suppose he wants to. Is it possible?
it's impossible for God not to be God.
Impossible.
It's
Precisely.
impossible for God not
So
to be God.
it
yeah.
is impossible.
God can't
I agree with
he
you.
can't give up his.
I agree with you
Here he
100%.
is. That's right.
It is
It's
impossible
for God to be unjust.
for the unknowledgeable
It is.
to become less than unknowledgeable.
It is. That's right.
So when during incarnation God becomes less than unknowledgeable, that incarnation is totally false. Why? Because you cannot become ignorant of the hour. When
see what
Jesus
you're
Christ
saying.
was asked,
I know,
and he
I
says,
agree, I agree,
of
I
that
agree,
day and of
I
that hour,
agree,
no
I
one
agree,
knows, not even
I
the
agree.
angels in heaven, not even the Son, but only who?
Yes, the Father.
By the Father.
But,
So
the
now,
Father.
during incarnation, what has happened is the Son does not know the hour.
That's right.
If you don't know the hour now, you could not have been all knowledgeable in the past. So Jesus could not have been.
that's not, I'm not sure that's right, because Jesus was able to give up some of his.
You just said it's
glory.
impossible. It's all our glory. It is impossible to give up
Well,
his
it's
very nature.
impossible for God.
His
but
nature.
It's not. Yeah, well, he is God, but it's.
Is the nature of God unknowledgeable?
No, you're not going to like me for saying this.
No,
You're-
say
you're
whatever
gonna-
you have to say.
You think this is going to be a cop-out, but it is part of the mystery of the Trinity.
It's not a mystery to me. It's quite clear.
Well,
To me, it's very clear
well-
that anyone who is incarnated and is not knowledgeable, it is impossible for them to have been knowledgeable in the past to begin with.
I'm not. Well, I don't agree
Because
with that.
look,
I don't
if,
agree with that.
if you are in,
it's part of
okay,
his. It's part of him.
let me
being human.
let me try to make it
Yeah.
clear to you.
I can't,
If you are
I'd
100
like to, in a moment, I'd like to come back to you. But
if you
go
are
on, go on.
100% knowledgeable,
Yeah.
how many percent ignorant are you?
Yes, I see where you're going.
0%.
I see where you're
0%.
going.
And you'll always remain 0% ignorant. If you are 100% infinite,
Yes.
like fully infinite,
Yeah.
what are the likelihood that you can become finite? 0%.
Yes, but that. Yes, well, I see where you guys are going.
That's not a mystery.
But yeah, but
It's the clarity of
but
our
of
senses
course- yes, but of course.
and the intellect.
God in the Trinity didn't give up knowledge. It's just God and the Son voluntarily
That
chose.
Son couldn't have been God to begin with if he became less than all knowledgeable. So that
Well,
means in the Trinity you already have a being who is less than all
Can
knowledgeable.
I say respectfully, I disagree with that.
It's not about
Because-
disagreeing.
Yeah.
If you are all knowledgeable to begin with, you can never become ignorant of anything.
Well, I'd have to disagree with that. I just have
What
to say-
makes you say an unknowledgeable, 100% knowledgeable being can become 5% ignorant?
Well, it's because that's part of the.
What human
humility.
logic are you
Well,
using?
it's- well,
What
it's-
divine logic are
well,
you
it's
using?
because- Well, well, the logic, which you may not agree with, that I'm trying to use, it's because it's what Jesus chooses to do when he comes in human form. So he gives up. He can't be everywhere as
Remember
well.
the words chooses. Can God choose, in your understanding, to become imperfect, become ignorant, become less than God, become non-God?
Well, I would say, in his
Same words I'm using.
fleshly- Yes, well,
Not
in his-
fleshly. In his nature, can I don't use the word can, but because you said
Well,
choice,
I-
so in your belief concept, can God choose to become not God
Well, I would say God in the
and no
past-
longer be God anymore?
I would. I see where your logic. I see where you're going. I see where you're going. But I would say I see where you're. I would say, but I mean, the Bible would teach that obviously God the Father. No, but God
Why
in the
not?
person of His Son.
Why God the Father cannot become not God?
Well, I'm not saying that Jesus is not God, but He gives up some of His godly attributes.
Now, if He does something, if God loses some of His nature, He's no longer that God with that nature. He becomes imperfect.
Well,
when
I'm not saying-
someone
well, he-
becomes ignorant, you have become already imperfect in your nature, which
Well-
is to know all knowledgeable. You're perfect.
Well, I'm not saying He's
To have
imperfect.
to have perfect knowledge is to be all knowledgeable. To not know something is an imperfection.
Well, no, I'm not. I tell you why I don't agree with that. But because Adam, we would say, was made perfect.
I just
but-
told you already, I don't agree Adam was perfect because a perfect being cannot fall.
We'd have to. Yeah,
Perfection.
We'd have to.
That's why I'm saying
That's where we'd have to disagree.
we need to really understand
We'd
the
have
concept
we'd
of
have to-
perfection.
Yeah, well,
A
we
perfection
would-
is
we would
something
disagree
that
on that.
opposes any kind of imperfection within it.
Yes, well, we would-
So when we talk about like infinity and finite and infinite,
Yeah.
the infinite cannot become finite and remain infinite. It's a nonsense
Well, to you.
to
But-
everyone.
So you're telling me that you understand how God thinks and how
No,
He acts.
I'm saying there are ways you can clearly
Do you think there are
reject.
ways that you don't understand?
No, I'm saying there are ways.